Hello, it's Shelley F Knight, bringing you Positive Changes, a self-kick podcast. So today on the show, we're joined by Claudia Goetzelmann, and she is founder of Permission to Bloom Midlife Coaching, and she's also an end-of-life doula. So hello to Claudia.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, bless you. You have so many stories to share. So please just share one of your stories with us today.
Well, where should we begin? I think I would like to talk about grief and death. And it might sound scary and heavy when we hear these words, but for me, it is actually not. And so I start how I came to engage on the topic of grief and death. It was about 3 years ago. Fast forward, I went through a very difficult divorce and I burned down, and I cracked open and I got to rebirth myself. And somehow I listened to a talk from Frank Ottostevsky. He has a hospice in San Francisco where I used to live at that time for homeless people. And it's a very, very beautiful talk, and I can share the link afterwards. And it says what the living can learn from the dying. And I was kind of obsessed by it. I listened to it 3 times, and then I translated the entire talk into German because I thought, oh my God, I need to talk to my parents about this. And then, I don't know why, but it led me down this road that this was Christmas. And I went back to San Francisco, and somehow, you know how the universe works in its magical ways. There was suddenly this educational program in front of me. It said, end of life doula training in Colorado, Boulder. And it started in March. And I don't know, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to just go there and do it. So I did it, and it was an incredible heart-opening experience. And I learned a lot, and I cried a lot. I also let go of a lot. And so then, 9 months later, I had a certificate to be a certified end-of-life doula.
That's wonderful. It's a term which I hadn't heard of for many, many years. And I worked at end of life as a nurse. And it seems like it's really accepted now, which I love. Just for clarification, are they the same as a soul midwife?
Yeah, I think maybe that's the UK word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in the US, there's doulas to bring babies into the world, and now we have doulas to help transition from form to formless. And I think it's gaining traction because I think people realize or wanting again to pass in a different way, and I think people are more conscious and thinking about how the transition should just be, how they can be prepared. Basically, what happens is that you start working with somebody 3 months before, if it's estimated. Okay. But then you really go into the details, and you find out, you work out together how would you like to be buried? What is your legacy? What about financial means? How should the actual celebration of your passing take place? Should there be any music? Should it be in a light room? How about the after, whatever there's to be taken care of? So it's a very intense but also very beautiful engagement where we can choose how we really want our last piece section of our life to look like.
That's lovely. It's really beautiful that it's so organised. You haven't got that terminal agitation that I used to see in nursing. But then the logical part of my head is thinking that surely we should be doing this anyway, shouldn't we? As we start to get there, if we know the imminent is coming, we should start to think, this is how I want to be remembered. This is what I need to get into order. This is how I want to be buried. But people don't do it, do they?
No, I think people are very scared of that topic.
Yeah.
Even so, we are born to die. But in our society, it's really not normalized to think about death. I mean, even we put makeup on our dead people. They
Yeah.
can even not look dead once they're dead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very interesting. But so I feel like we need to change the conversation about this and really normalize it, and because then we can hold it and integrate it into our daily life. And that's actually really where I went with this. After my education, I thought, I don't want to work really at the end of life with people at the end of life. It just didn't completely call me. But I felt so touched by the knowledge and the wisdom I gained and the tools I received. And I thought I should take this to the here and now, to really right into this conversation, into the middle of life, and start working with women or whoever wants to have this conversation or wants to change their life and bring the awareness. Because if we engage on this topic, or if we can question, if we envision, let's say, how it would be if we would have 3 months to live, it really will impact the here and now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I know that you very similar to me that grief is so closely associated with death, when actually grief happens when we lose anything with which we have an emotional connection. So if you're in your midlife, like myself, just like me, Claudia, and I have had a lot of losses. I've lost the ability to sleep at night. I've lost sort of, the elasticity of my skin, my energy level. My hair's changing. There are losses, and then the children all go to school, and so you lose that identity of being a mum at home. So there are many losses. I think it's brilliant that you brought that end of life wishes and brought it back into the now.
Yeah, and I also feel so you mentioned grief. That's, it's a whole nother topic, because I think we we face or experience 1,000 deaths through our life.
Yeah.
They're little deaths, even like the normalization of something. You say, yeah, the change of our body, the change, loss of friendships, loss of an animal, or lose our job, or just a disappointment. This is
Yeah.
still a little death inside of us. And if we don't have the tools and know how to actually honor it and grieve it, then it festers inside of us. And then eventually it will, maybe come out as an explosion, or we turn bitter, or we turn into anxiety arises, or we have anger and we don't even know why.
Mm.
So I think it's very important to engage on the topic of death now, and also on the topic of grief, and learn how to be with it.
I absolutely love that. I was smiling away because you said about little deaths, and in my next book, Good Grief, I call it mini deaths, and it is exactly what you said. It's like we are always having loss, whether it's like loss of, an argument, confidence, relationship, direction, weight, money, whatever you're losing, it is a little mini death throughout our life.
Yeah, and so it's even like we can say, when you look at people how they die, I feel like you can see how they lived. Or when you see how people live, this is also the way they actually die. Because if we lived well, we will die well. Because then we have been conscious and we have been engaging on this topic. But if we don't, then everything will come very sudden, and we will be pushed into a almost traumatic experience, because we just swapped over by, usually it's very sudden. I mean, some deaths are long and painful, but often it's just like this, and we're like, well, now what? So
That's
it's a
really
very good,
interesting.
yeah, it's a very good skill to acquire. So maybe you wonder now, so how do I acquire the tool to handle grief?
Yeah, well, I was still stuck on the part where you were saying about how you live is how you die. Because again, obviously about positive changes. So if you find yourself in quite a sort of traumatic place or anxious place, you could create a change now in your life. Because I don't know if it's because of positive change or because I deal with grief myself, but I don't have a fear of dying. And it really bugs my children, Claudia, really bugs them because they're just sort of like, could you stop talking about it? And it's like, but I've done all the things I wanted to do. Yes, I'd like to stay around for longer, but like I always wanted to publish a book. I wanted to meet the man of my dreams, have children, have really good friendships, want my spirituality to, grow. And I kind of done that, and I don't have the fear. And I do a lot of tools. I know you're going to share in a moment. But I do have a lot of tools like my meditation, my yoga, even candlelight and early nights. It's just all those things, how I look after myself. So I'm having a good life while I'm here.
Right. Well, you are a conscious being. You are not afraid of your insights, or you're engaging with your soul, or even with the darkness or the fears of your soul, right? If we can befriend those thoughts, those fears, maybe let's say because of the topic of this conversation, the fear of dying.
Yeah.
And you wonder, where does that come from? Why are we so afraid? But I think if we again come back to the here and now, and we know that we live a beautiful life, the best we can live, the most authentic we can be in our everyday, then we don't have to have this fear of dying, because then we can truly look back and say, I lived an amazing life, I'm ready.
Yeah.
But if we don't do that, and we postpone everything into the future and be like, one day I'm going to do this. This is my dream, but I'm not doing it now. I'm waiting, and then in the future I will do it. And it becomes one thing to the next thing and the next thing. And this future day may actually never ever arrive. And that, I feel, heart wrenching when you hear people say, really at their last breath, oh, I wished I would have traveled there. Oh, I wished I would have mended the relationship to my daughter. Or, I wished I would have loved more. I would have risked more. And so I think it's so important to reflect on that, because at the end, it's really a short journey. And it's this beautiful gift we have, this here and now, to be in our body, to wake up every day and, and live this life.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I like that. And that, as you were saying about when you get to the end of the life, it's like, I wish I had have done. And that is like the life lessons of the dying, which I've spoken about before in my work. And it is, you don't regret the things you did do. You always regret the things you didn't. And it is sort of, like taking more time off, being more risky, connecting something outside of yourself, mending those relationships along the way. And it is, I guess it's just living while we're alive, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, so I guess it starts with engaging and changing the topic, and engaging on this topic, and maybe, even having a dinner conversation there, talking about this. I don't know, I feel like we should normalize um, talking about death or grief. And I think if we can, with our family or with our friends, that for me also creates enormous intimacy, because it's really beautiful to know how, for instance, my mother wants to pass, or how I want my friends to know how I feel about it. And I think it's so beautiful what we can learn about each other when we actually are open to this conversation. And more so than ever again in these current times, I think all we have is like intimate or beautiful close relationships with another person, or our community. So there's, for instance, desk cafes. I don't know if you have this here in the UK or in Europe, but I know in the US, where I usually live, there's a lot of that. And you can just meet up for a coffee if you don't have friends who want to talk about this and share and make a plan. it's just a true, yeah, I'm really advocating for, taking the taboo away from this topic and just making it, just normalizing it.
Yeah. So what you might not know about me is like, yeah, I do know about death cafes because I set up Good Grief here in Northampton, because when I left nursing at the end of 2019, just that end of life, I used to see people, obviously I saw the patient dying, but then I saw the families that were left behind, and they would just get stuck in that moment of death, not in all the lovely memories beforehand and all the things they could have put right, just stuck. How do I move on without you? And so when I left nursing, it was still something really, I don't know, in my soul, in my heart, that I wanted to continue with. So I set up a death cafe here locally. And what I love about it is the mix of people we have, like whether they've lost like a partner, a sister, a parent, there seems to be some kind of base level where you all experience the same. But what I also love is how much laughter there is as well. It's not all macabre and miserable, and talking about death doesn't make it come for you any quicker. But I love, as you say, it is that connection, that understanding, and just
Right.
getting rid of the taboo. So yeah, I love death cafes, and there's thousands of them around the world. I know I'm not unique,
Yeah.
but
That's
I
so
am
cool that
passionate.
you did that you started that. Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's just something I was passionate about. I mean, I love community anyway. I want, my family to grow up where they feel safe, they're part of it, part of a bigger picture, they give back the generations, because it's how I was raised.
Right.
But yeah, grief is very important to me. And I just want people to talk about it. The life doesn't have to stop then. The life
Yeah.
obviously stops, but it's just, again, positive change is trying to inspire people to move forward in a new way.
Yeah, and it's also, we think about grief, for instance, in a very particular way. And there is, the six gates of grief, and the stages we move through, and how it's not linear.
Yeah,
But also, I feel like it really is an expression of deep, deep love and care.
yeah,
And if instead of coming at it, and I don't know, it's probably around the world the same. I mean, I can only mostly speak for the US, but often people, that because they don't have the tools or have the knowledge, they're like, oh, you're still grieving? I'm like, yeah, I'm probably gonna grieve for the rest of my life. And but then you can hold it, you can also hold it in love, and it's a very warm feeling to me. And it doesn't have to, yeah, yes, it's painful, and maybe there's anger, and because it's just, you have to work through it. But I feel like it's this grief is lost love.
yeah.
And if we can again rephrase or reframe the way we look and come to grief, then it becomes such a beautiful expression.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And in my next book, it's called Good Grief. And it is about making it a positive experience. And it is a little bit controversial, as people will learn, but it's just doable. I don't know if that's even a word, but it is kind of doable. That we sort of get stuck in our grief and don't know how to move forward. But there's so many ways we can. Like if you're not into talking therapies, there's all the spiritual things, simple things like journaling or meditation.
Right.
All these beautiful things, memory boxes. So it is just finding what works for you on your journey, but not just a grief journey, in life as well, isn't it? Finding tools to help you.
Yeah, it's again, it doesn't have to be a traumatic loss of a family or member or a friend or a beloved one. It's just even the little things that we know how to grieve them. And to me that means like honoring them and
Yeah.
gracefully putting them down into a safe place inside my soul, where it has a special place. And to me, that then I let it go, and I can be free of that negative emotion or whatever. It's just becomes part of me. It's not down. There's it just goes up, right? You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
gracefully letting go.
I love that. You said gracefully putting them down. I was like, oh my goodness, that's beautiful. And I think it's really important because we're talking about grief, and there's like, obviously, when you have grief when someone dies. But if you apply the tools, as you were saying, like when you lose little things in life, you're always doing it, aren't you? Like I call it mini deaths. But if you have a
Mm-hmm.
mini death, like you lose your job or you lose your way, whatever you're losing, and you find a tool or a way that helps you come through it and move on, surely we can then apply that as a coping strategy for the bigger losses in our life.
Right, because then we have the tools. And then
Yeah,
if a bigger loss comes, or a bigger grief, or a bigger death, then, we can come back to our tools. And we're like, I got this.
I love it. What tools
And
would you encourage people to work with?
what tools I would people to work with? You mentioned journaling. I
Yeah,
feel journaling is a very good way of working through it, because it's a very somatic experience, grieving. It comes from our soul, but it's also taking over. Maybe we get sweaty, we get anxious, we get nervous. It's a very somatic body experience. So, and then writing, journaling is same. It's a very somatic experience, because we write out whatever goes through us, and it's our private journal, and nobody needs to see it. So I can say whatever I want. It's my secret. And it can have, it can hold all emotions, right? But as long as I'm able to express them and let it out. And I don't know about you, but for me it really works. If I feel nervous, I feel anxiety, I feel restless, I know, and I sit down, and sometimes I don't even know in the beginning, what do I write? But then
yeah,
suddenly it just starts, and it's like a waterfall, and just writing and writing and writing. We're like, wow. And then it's such a relief afterwards, like, huh. And it's really gone out of my mind. I feel clean. I have space. There's something so light suddenly about me, in me, because it's just safe in my journal. I wrote it there.
yeah, I love it. I know I've said to people before that I used to do morning pages, the Julia Cameron theory, that when you wake up
Mm-hmm.
in the morning, you just free flow and write whatever comes out. And it's like 3 pages of A4, and you don't have to be grammatically correct. Don't worry about your punctuation. Just let that stuff go.
Yeah.
And I did it for a while. I think I'm quite bad, Claudia, actually. I tend to do it when I hit like rock bottom or start to dip, when I should probably do it as a daily tool. But you get it all out and you just think, my God, how did I sleep last night? Because you're worried about what you said to someone, that you didn't order that on the shopping. What about that decision 2 weeks ago? When will I learn about that? And these
Right.
busy thoughts we have. And in the morning pages, which is a way of journaling first thing, it's a cleansing process. You think, oh, I feel better after that. I feel lighter. And it's getting
Right.
it out, isn't it?
Yeah, also maybe a gratitude journal in the evening before we go to
Yeah.
sleep. That could be also a very beautiful thing. And it's a muscle, we need to train,
Yeah.
because maybe it doesn't come easy, and we often get so lost in the day. And we're like, ugh, my day sucked. I don't, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm nothing. I know. But then when we sort of pause and we calm down and we breathe, and that is another a suggestion I want to make, breathing. And so we just really calm down, and we're with ourselves and our breathing, and suddenly these little things come, because our lives are so filled with abundance. There's so much, and we just we overlook so many things in our
Yeah.
day, because we get bogged down by the one thing. Maybe the person in the car just turned us off, and then our whole day is ruined. But then we forget all the amazing things which happen after.
Yeah.
Because we're so preoccupied by, or engulfed by, that anger or whatever, upsetness. So I think that also it's also a beautiful way to end the day,
Yeah.
by just thinking of 3 things and writing them down, and then going with the feeling of gratitude to sleep. I think it's a very beautiful way to have a peaceful sleep.
This might be why I don't sleep, Claudia, because I do my gratitude at the start of the day. I'm just anyone that's watching this on YouTube, you think, what's she writing down? It's like gratitude at the end of the day, Shelley. Yeah, because I wake up, and to start the day the positive way, I start with like 5 things I'm grateful for and why. So it's like, thank you for the shelter I've had overnight so I could sleep well, or have a good try. Terrible insomniac. But I do my gratitude at the start of the day, like thank you for, the water by my bed so that I can nourish myself. Thank you for my husband beside me. I know I am loved. And so I do it in the morning, but sleep rubbish at night. So I'm going to so match that up now. I'm going to switch around.
Okay, you do.
I am grateful, but not at the right end of the day. So I wake up, start positive, but maybe should I readdress it at the end of the day?
That's funny.
So you've said about journaling, which I love, gratitude, but you were going to say about breath work. What breath work do you use? I love box breathing, the count of 4, but what do you use?
I don't know. It's just really also depends. If you start, it's often when we start with something new, I think we can overwhelm ourselves so quickly. But it just doesn't need to be anything other than 3 inhales and exhales slowly into our mouth and out of, into our nose and out of our mouth, or into our belly. And 3, just 3, really already calms our nervous system. And we can start from there, and it's almost a little meditation. And then if you want to expand, then we can expand. I recently started recording on SoundCloud little guided meditations, and they're 5 minutes. And it says, take a moment or breathe with me. And it's just again, like it could happen, we don't have to do it guided. You could do it by yourself when you're driving and in the car, and the red light, on the red light, it's red, and you have a moment, and you could just really breathe and think about, for instance, abundance. Yeah. Or you can think about of the intention of that we are enough, because we're so harsh on ourselves and we rush and we forget again, and then we get derailed throughout our day, and then it's one thing to the next thing. But sometimes we have, maybe instead of looking at the phone while we're on the red light.
Don't do that. That's naughty here in the UK. Don't do that.
I think we all do that. We all do that. It's incredible how long a red light can be, how much email checking and whatever you can do suddenly. But instead of doing that, we could just have our hands on the wheel and close our eyes and breathe in and out and think about the abundance through our day, all the things which are around us and we take for granted. And simple things like that, I feel like it just brings us back to the center, grounds, as I said, grounding. And once we get onto our next task, we probably feel a little bit more aligned with ourselves.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So when you're working with people with the midlife, what's their biggest pain point? Why do they come to you in the first point?
I feel there is a nagging feeling inside them that there is more. The midlife is a very interesting stage. We all go through it. We have, accomplished certain things, and then suddenly we wake up and like, and now what?
Yeah.
And so, and often we don't have, again, the tools or the language to find out what actually means. And so my experience, it's often coming back to a younger version of ourselves and picking up where we forgotten or left because we went down a certain road, let's say a career, children, family. And, we have achieved suddenly these things, and the fire sort of is going away, or the excitement, and children are growing up and they don't need us anymore. So there's this space inside of us, and then it's like, wow, now what? And so that's sort of where we start working together and going and digging in and finding out who we want to be, who we need to be. Because as a coach, we usually don't go back into the past, but we really look at the future and the plan of like, who do I need to be in 1 year, 3 years, and then we can make a plan together how we can get there and reach this goal.
That's really interesting. So people listen to the show know that my mum's a counsellor, so she does a lot of getting people to go back to the past and addressing what, when, why, how. But in coaching, I love that you're dealing with who you are now. So kind of you're meeting them where they're at, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. So you
Yeah.
don't have to go back through the trauma or anything, or
No, a little bit, we talk a bit about, about upbringing, but not in that depth. It's really more, who are we now? How did we arrive into the now? And what do we envision? What are our dreams? How do we see the future unfolding? Is there something we haven't accomplished? And I think, again, the end of life tools come very well into this process, because we go fast forward and be like, okay, now imagine how it would be. You're much, much, much older. Because often people like, I don't know who I'm going to be. I don't know. I've done this, I've done that, I have family. But I'm not really happy. There's something. It's like I'm restless. And so, how do we get into that space in between the now and the end of life? And that's, it's a beautiful life stretch we have. Like, it's this gift of, we get to live a whole nother life. If we want to reinvent ourselves, let's do it. So, but we need to find out what it is. And so, going to the end of life and then working the way back and finding out how we feel it and how we can create this future together.
I think that is so powerful. So you're not doing like the last 3 months of their life, you're sort of going to the end. So you're almost reflecting back. So say you were the end of life, you'd be reflecting back thinking, did I do everything I wanted to do? So this is what I was saying, like I was saying to my teenage son, even though it's mortified Claudia, but he was mortified because I was going like, well, I've done it all, I've written the book, got the podcast, got the children, and he's really uncomfortable with it. But it is, if I went forward to the end of my life, I'd like to probably sell more books or, something, but no great changes. But that's really brilliant that if you're lacking clarity now, you can find it by going to the end and working back.
Yeah, I think, you also have a lot of tools. You're a very conscious being. You have done a lot of work for yourself. So for you probably feel aligned. You have also the language to express all the things you just said. But a lot of people don't have that even, it's like, it's just a nagging feeling, a void, a belly ache. It's a restlessness. And then, but, when people come like, I don't have any hobbies, because all I did was take care of my children for the last 12 years. So you identify through the children, or you've reached a career and then you're almost at a burnout and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I working, 50 hours, whatever, 55 hours a week? And so it's very interesting to go in and find the silence and really listen, and again strengthen the muscle of intuition and deep knowing, because we all know, we have it inside of us. We just need to take it out, find the words, and express it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I think that when people come to you where they are at the moment, I should imagine, maybe not, but I should imagine there's quite a lot of people that don't trust what comes up from them. They don't know who they are inside. So there's almost like a trust process with yourself.
It is actually amazing that you mentioned trust, because I think trust is such an important topic on this, in this work. And it's a trust. First, I have to establish with my client, the client with me, that we speak the same language, that we're aligned. But then it's also from my client, like trusting whatever comes up. And that's also a very interesting, again, I would say society doesn't really help us the way we live, that we trust ourselves, that we can trust our gut, because we have all these outside stimulations where we trust what that person says, we trust that marketing spot, we trust that, but and then sometimes we know there's all these red flags or green flags or whatever flags, but we know, it's always that knowing, and that has to do with self-trust. So again, we learn like to find out, who am I really? it's a very beautiful process.
Yeah. I love it. I'm biased, obviously, but I do love it. But, but so when I sort of moved forward, so like I nursed for many years and got defined as a nurse, and then I sort of like a mum, so I'm sort of like Harrison's mum, Poppy's mum, Mila's mum, Daisy's mum, or Wesley's wife, whatever I am, all those labels. And I have to strip it back, like a bit like an onion. That's a beautiful analogy, isn't it? An onion. Peel back the layers and find out who I am. And for me, the way forward was just sort of digging up like a bit of the childhood, the broken relationships. Who am I about this job, this label? And I say I do gratitude, meditation, yoga, all of that. But can people move forward through midlife crisis without a spiritual route?
No.
No. Good answer. That will do me.
No.
I think there's some real ego people out there. Maybe they just think like, get a business plan and then I'll just have a little bit of counseling. But I'm thinking, because I know for me, mine was, as you said beautifully at the start, like you cracked open and found your soul.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I was this business person. I had to have that income and all that kind of thing. When actually now I'm really happy with a candle. Sit in a room with a candle and a bit of silence. I'm happy. So I just wondered, like, what tools can people use that aren't spiritual? But you're saying it is almost like a rebirth, a spiritual growth almost.
I think, when the voices are there, and when the voices, we can numb the voices. We can maybe the voice comes up and then we just numb it with whatever we escape into, whatever there might be, substance, another job, another something. But we can't run away from ourselves, and it will come back. And these voices will get louder and louder. And that is the cracking, right? It's the cracking of our soul when the voices the voices are the literal, like, that's when it cracks. And then it will come up in one form or another, and it may come up in form of depression. It may come up in form of a really deep crisis. It may come up in form of an addiction, but it will come up. And and with some people it may come up as just a restlessness, as a void, as feeling lost. I mean, whatever the constellation is, like, we're all individual. We have all different way of expression. So, but I think it will come up, and I think then this cracking will push us inward, and that's when I think we get in touch with our soul, because the soul just wants to be heard and acknowledged and seen.
No, I think that's beautiful. So this is going where I went from a nurse to past life regressionist. So if they don't learn the lessons in this life, I personally believe that if you come in this life and you're thinking, right, I'm just going to be logical, everything's about the money, I think that you're just going to come back in another life and have to have that spiritual awakening almost. So you might feel restless in this life, but in the next life, you're just getting the same lesson.
But do you know, it's so many times, I'm sure it happened to all of us, we make mistakes over and over again. Different situations, different scenarios, but then it's basically the same mistake again until you learn your lesson, and then it goes away. So I don't know. And then also we can go right to the end of life. I mean, this is part of this, what I've learned with working with the end of life. And that's, I think, if you don't address the numbness or the cracks or the voices or your soul or your yearning, at the end of the life, it will come out probably. It's exactly those things where you suddenly realize, I should have.
Yeah.
I should have loved more. I should have risked more. I should have traveled more. I should have. And then I think that's, to me, as I said earlier, that's heart-wrenching to go from form to formless in that sort of, with that knowing. So, but it's a personal choice, and we're all on our own journey.
Yeah, absolutely, we are. And I know, like, even living with my husband Claudia, I know that he's a totally different man to me, and he's just sort of like, kindly lent me his office today, but he's not really into candles and incense and crystals, if you're honest. But he's on his journey and I'm holding his hand along the way. Do you know what I mean? So we do all have our own journey, and it's not always spiritual, but we still move forwards, and life still passes by however we choose to make the choices along the way, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, he doesn't like half the candles. Far too many cushions apparently is another thing. But again, it comes down to life choices. He's like, I never had cushions or sandwich bags till I met you. I was like, well, your life's more complete now. So we're going along on this journey of life, and I don't like to think I'm near the end of my life, but I really drive my family mad in my kitchen, Claudia, because I say to them, like, realistically, I've got more years behind me than I have in front of me. And they think that's really miserable and macabre. But seriously, I'm in my late 40s. Do you know what I mean? I probably am that side of the balance, the shorter end of the string. And I feel all right with that. And I don't know if it is like yourself, where we've worked with the end of life and we've learned, it's about connection, do what you want when you're here and able. But I do think it was really beautiful working with end of life, that I almost learned how to live my life better or more consciously. I know you said about consciously, and it is being aware in your life, not just sort of bumbling through in like I don't know, watching box sets, going to work, sticking to that bad relationship, is it? I think when we get more conscious, more aware, like you said, the restlessness, which I loved because I've been there, when you think,
Yeah.
it's good, but is it good enough? Do you think you've
Yeah.
lived better now you've worked with end of life?
You asking me personally?
Yeah, because I know I
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I'm very, very conscious about every day, and how I spend my day, and what do I, what, to me everything is vibration. What energy I put outward into the world and wherever it ripples off to. I think that's another very important thing for me. And also sometimes I have to remind myself that I really need to be on that edge of, daring, doing something new, something I haven't done, and not fall back into the comfort zone,
Yeah.
because there's so much to experience. And I think that's very, very important for me to feel alive, actually, because that's a whole nother conversation. What is it, what makes us feel alive? Because it's very different to when we're 17 or 25, and now we're talking about find out, who am I, and what is it, what really makes me feel alive? So
And
it's a very beautiful inquiry.
yeah, and I think like it's not a one-off event either, is it? Because we're always changing.
Mhm.
My friend always
Yeah.
says the most beautiful thing. She says that we're always like lobsters, so you sort of have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and your shell will crack, and you'll be really vulnerable and exposed for a few months, and you like want to hide under a rock. But your next shell, your next chapter will grow back, and then you just have to grow again. You have to go for it again, and just keep up leveling your life all the way through, which I love. I love lobsters anyway. They think they're very cute looking things, but I do love that. It's not a one-off change, is it? And you probably see this with your clients, that you don't just do one little change, have a nice life. You're always doing like an audit of your life almost.
Yeah, and it's again, it's those little deaths again. Maybe we find this is it, that makes me feel alive, whatever it is right now, or whatever I am accomplishing, or whatever my goals are for the next year. And then maybe it's done, and then we're like, wow, and then we get to level up again. It's almost like leveling up. We're on this sort of, and it's not like up, up, up. It's always a little bit wee.
Yeah.
It's like on the ocean, like a rocky boat.
Choppy waters
A
ahead.
metaphor. Yeah, choppy waters ahead. Yeah.
And sometimes we feel like we're drowning, to be quite honest, don't we?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. We're
Yeah.
holding on
Yeah.
onto the rail. I'm like, ah.
But that's good, because you said to be on the edge of daring, so that's good.
That's right. Thanks for reminding me.
Bless you. So the tools you say that we can start using from today is like journaling, gratitude, and the breath work. Is there any other tools that we can share today?
Well, it's all, maybe connecting to nature. That would be another one, grounding in nature. I think over the last year or two, a lot of us are urban dwellers, going out and being in nature, maybe hugging a tree. Maybe it's not that hippie anymore. Maybe it's just okay to hug a tree, right? We find out so much about nature and what nature gives us. And so I think just freeing our mind, being away from our devices, and calming down, hearing our inner voices, pausing. A word I use recently a lot is contemplation. And it's not even a meditation, but really contemplating. Just maybe picking a word or something which sort of is steering us when we wake up or throughout our day, and we can contemplate on that and find deeper wisdom with that.
I think that's beautiful. I've absolutely loved speaking to you today. Thank you so much. I mean, I always get a little bit too excited about, grief and end of life and the lessons within, but you just ooze spirituality and general gorgeousness, Claudia, if I'm honest. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please ensure you subscribe and do leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, head on over to shelleyfknight.com and you can buy yourself a copy of Positive Changes, a self-cookbook. If you want some positivity until the next show, come join us over on Facebook. That's Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. So I've been Shelley F. Knight, and as always, you've been amazing.